Formula One is about speed. Lightning-fast turns, overtakes in less than a moment, Bunsen burning on the track as you hear the tyres screech, the engines roar, and these million-dollar machines, these state-of-the-art, land-bound rocket ships race to be the first one to cross that finish line. And all that effort, all the mechanical miracles that make their cars so fast, so efficient, all the skill in the drivers which can make choices in a split second, can be rendered useless in just 1 second. We've all probably played racing games. In order to make the game challenging, the inbuilt AI uses a term called rubber banding. What this means is that when you or another player is severely behind, the game will either artificially slow down the other cars in front or give a speed boost off screen to the ones lagging behind. Oftentimes, this can result in being overtaken just before the finish line by an opponent that has no business being as fast as they are. And it's frustrating, rage-inducing. All those minutes of a race that in reality felt like hours of ducking, weaving and outpacing other cars for naught right at the very end. But for a second, imagine this isn't some virtual setting. You aren't a frustrated player. It's the most high class of actual races, and you, your whole team, and everyone else cheering for you worldwide is dead set on seeing you finish it. But for a second, imagine this isn't some virtual setting. You aren't a frustrated player. It's the most high class of actual races, and you, your whole team, and everyone else cheering for you worldwide is dead set on seeing you finish it. But also this time, there is no rubber banding. These dramatic turns of events are in real life, and the crowds go wild just to see it. The year is 1971. The Beatles had just broken up the year before. The Soviet Union just launched Salyut 1, the world's first space station, into the planet's orbit. The US began its first diplomatic talks with China over ping pong, and in the month of September, just north of Milano in Italy, 2 drivers would make history. Coincidentally, this was the last year the Monza National Autodrome was going to be used as a track due to impending changes to its most dangerous corners. Jackie Stewart, the Flying Scot, was poised to finish off his dominating season here, and then in a victorious fashion no less. But even before the race began, the V8 engine of his Tyrrell Ford was struggling against the other machines. It was probable that Jackie would still take the championship, but he would not take the audience's hearts. One might not imagine that a race set at the start of the 70s would have this much excitement, this much torque, this much speed, but in a record only beaten 32 years later in 2003. And ironically enough, the same track, this was the fastest ever race in Formula One history, with an average speed of 242 kilometers per hour, translated to 150.754 miles per hour. But the sheer power of this race isn't even the most exciting part. Stewart, the lead and favourite, was long gone past the final lap, having retired in the 16th thanks to engine problems, leaving a crew of rookies and undesirables at the front of the race. Francois Sever was nearing victory, neck and neck with the super Swede Ronnie Peterson, but on the last corner, with one of those moments that makes a legend out of a man, the Brit, Peter Gethin, took a chance. He almost derailed his whole vehicle, passing through the grass and pushed his machine to the maximum, leaving the Frenchman in the dust. As time slowed down, both men probably thought they'd won the race themselves, but by a difference of 0.01 seconds, Gethin secured his place in Formula One history. Unfortunately, this would be the only F1 race Gethin would win in first place. Not like he could ever top it, of course. And due to the point difference, Jackie Stewart would go on to win the title for that year's season. But this is yet another reminder that while Formula One is about speed, it's not just about speed. Race after race in a season, quaffing rounds, the race before the race, the battle for pole position, hell, even the 50 laps drivers have to complete before crossing the finish line on a single track are all pieces of evidence that F1 isn't really about going as fast as possible, as much as it is about endurance. In a championship, every top 10 qualification in a race earns the driver and his team points. Across the many races in that season, these points are accumulated to decide the winner at the end. And here, a system of another type of close finishes begins to unveil itself. Not of the closest finishes in terms of seconds, but points. After all, isn't the whole championship one big race through this perspective? We're probably all familiar with Niki Lauda and James Hunt's dramatic battle for the championship in 1976. Spoilers for the award-winning 2013 movie Rush if you aren't. With the 10th race of the season taking place in Nuremberg, Germany, Austrian legend and top driver Lauda protested that the track didn't have enough safety precautions. Some of his fellow drivers agreed and took part in the protest, but alas, the foreshadowing fell on deaf ears and the race proceeded. The second lap was when it happened. Lauda's Ferrari swerved, lost control and hit an embankment, exploding into a sea of flames. Thankfully, Arturo Mazzario rushed to Niki's car and through literal tongues of fire pulled him out of the wreckage. Niki Lauda's face was covered in scars and burns. He remained conscious for a few moments after the race before slipping into a coma. It looked as though this would be the end of the promising young Austrian. He had already won the 1975 championship and could easily retire with a solid gold under his belt. But like a phoenix rising from the ashes after just 2 missed races, Lauda rode again. In mid-September, with visible bandages on his face and scalp, Niki returned to the Italian Grand Prix. His rivalry with James Hunt had intensified, and the last remaining races had them duke it out, although Lauda still had the advantage scored during his lightning-fast finishes earlier on in the year. It all came to a head in the year's final race taking place in Japan. The weather was expectedly climactic, with roaring torrents of rain pouring down on the track. The stage was set for the two legends' final showdown, and the race began. But scarred, literally and figuratively, by his brush with death in Germany, Lauda stepped down from the race in the second lap. It was simply too dangerous to drive. This decision led to Hunt finishing the race in third place and snatching the 1976 championship from the destiny-defined Lauda by 1 single point. But the legend doesn't stop there. Like we said before, Formula One is about endurance. Lap after lap, track after track, season after season, the race continues. 1 year later, in 1977, steadied and after a trial by fire, Niki Lauda would go on to dominate the championship and win himself a second gold trophy. And yet, as heartwarming as it is, it doesn't fit as well within the theme of the video as another chapter of his story a bit later on. 1984. Alain Prost is a brilliant driver and rising star in the F1 community. After his second place in the 1983 season, and armed with the lightning-fast McLaren MP42, the young and talented Frenchman is gearing up for a victory this time. But he did not plan on a legend returning from retirement 2 years prior. Prost was faster, he was consistently more agile and nimble, and yet Niki Lauda racked up the points. Race after race, where he could not count on quicker reflexes and simple outpacing, Lauda bet on experience and consistency. Where he lost what would have been the greatest Formula One redemption story in history to Hunt with just 1 single point, he made up in showing the world the old racer had just now entered his prime. At the end of the season, in the result of the last race in Portugal, Prost managed to finish first. But unfortunately for him, Lauda was just too fast and ended in second. Tallying up all the results of the championship so far, the result began to emerge and shock spectators. In a climactic, triumphant, and by every metric imaginable deserved spot, Niki Lauda had beaten Alain Prost by half a point. A record never to be beaten in F1 history. In his own redemption story, Prost would win next year's title, beginning his own impressive story through Formula One, after which Lauda, a paragon of perseverance and fast where it counted, retired from racing.